You think you can spot danger. You think you know when someone's energy is off, when their behavior crosses a line. But Carl Jung would warn you otherwise, because the people who destroy you the most don't look like villains. They look like lovers, friends, family. They smile, they speak softly, they seem fragile. But beneath that surface lies something far more dangerous than malice, the unconscious. And it's not just theirs, it's yours too. Jung believed most of what governs us, our fears, reactions, attachments, is not under conscious control. That includes the people around you, their pain, their shame, their projections, and if they're unaware of it, you become the host. You felt this before, that invisible weight after a conversation, the guilt that wasn't yours, the emotional fog you can't explain. That's not intuition failing, that's your psyche being used. It starts subtly. You think you're helping, being kind, being mature, but suddenly you're carrying pain that doesn't belong to you. This is projection, and it's the weapon of the unconscious. Jung called projection a defense mechanism. What someone can't face within themselves, they unconsciously assign to others. To you, you become their enemy, their savior, their disappointment, but you're no longer you. You're a symbol in someone else's psychic story. And here's the danger. They don't know they're doing it. You think you're resolving a conflict, but you're inside their shadow, drowning in wounds they refuse to see. And it doesn't come from evil. It comes from disintegration. These people are not connected to their inner world. Their unconscious leaks, and it leaks into you. Jung warned, the real danger isn't the predator. It's the unconscious person ruled by masks, trauma, and repression, not because they choose to harm, but because they don't even realize they are. Let's start with the first type, the unconscious manipulator. They don't control with demands or cruelty. They control with emotional chaos they don't understand. Their wounds become your responsibility. Their sadness, your fault. Their anger, your provocation. They play the victim not by strategy, but by default. And that's what makes it so convincing. You begin to question yourself. Maybe you were insensitive. Maybe you caused the tension. Maybe you're toxic. This is manipulation by projection. Subtle, emotional, and devastating. Often, these people are charismatic, sensitive, passionate. That's the trap. You think you're connecting. You think you're helping. But what you're really doing is absorbing. They don't see you. They see themselves reflected in you. Distorted, symbolic, unreal. And you're left playing a role you never agreed to. Savior, enemy, mirror, parent. And when your reality gets replaced by their narrative, you lose touch with yourself. So how do you escape? You start by asking, is this emotion mine, or was it placed here? Because the unconscious manipulator doesn't kick down the door. They slip in through your empathy. Then you recognize the next type, the bearer of the persona. They seem perfect, always smiling, always polite, always composed. But Jung saw this as one of the most dangerous masks. The persona isn't inherently bad. It's a social face we all wear. But when someone becomes that face, when they believe they are only the version others expect, the real self gets buried. Behind the charm is emotional decay. This person fears vulnerability, so they build a script, rehearsed, polished, impenetrable, and you feel it. The conversations feel safe, but empty. The smiles are warm, but distant. And the deeper danger? They demand that you play along. Your spontaneity threatens them. Your emotion makes them uncomfortable. They want perfection from themselves and from you, so you adapt, you shrink, you rehearse your words, and without realizing it, you become another actor in their theater. Jung warned, identification with the persona blocks individuation, the journey toward true self. When someone is obsessed with their image, everything raw and human becomes intolerable, and you, being raw and human, become a problem. But it gets darker, because when someone represses for too long, their shadow grows. Which brings us to the third type, the owner of the repressed shadow. On the surface, they're calm, controlled, even admirable, but the emotions they deny, anger, jealousy, desire, don't disappear. They ferment until they erupt. Jung said, the shadow is everything we refuse to see in ourselves, and yet it still appears, often as fate. This person doesn't just avoid the darkness. They punish others for expressing what they themselves repress. They condemn your emotion, your spontaneity, your flaws, until one day they snap, and the calm mask is shattered by a rage even they can't explain. They're not evil, they're fractured, but that fracture cuts everyone near them. Stay too close, and you'll bleed for emotions that aren't yours. What makes it worse? They don't see the damage. They think they're composed, mature, enlightened, but only because they've outsourced their emotions to you. They walk away calm while you hold the chaos. And if you think you can fix them, Jung would caution, the desire to fix is how the unconscious pulls you in deeper. Now the fourth type, the emotional parasite. They're quiet, no drama at first, just connection. They want your support, your presence, your reassurance. They lean in until leaning becomes dependence. Your energy becomes their oxygen. At first it feels like closeness, but soon you notice they're not growing, they're feeding on your time, your empathy, your silence. They praise your strength, say no one understands them like you, and you believe it because you want to believe love is enough. But Jung reminds us, unconscious dependency isn't love. It's fusion, it's enmeshment, and it slowly devours your individuality. You stop expressing needs, begin to shrink so they don't break. Your identity wraps around their pain. This is emotional codependency disguised as care, and it will cost you your autonomy. The fifth type, the spiritual bypasser. They speak in light, peace, transcendence. They preach forgiveness before accountability, detachment before understanding, positivity before truth. It sounds elevated, but Jung would call it what it is, a bypass, a refusal to engage with the shadow. They use spirituality not to grow, but to escape, to avoid discomfort, to shame emotion, to protect a spiritual mask that floats above real work, express something raw, grief, anger, trauma, and they call it low vibration, tell you to let it go before you've even felt it. But healing isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's rage, sometimes it's silence, sometimes it's staring into your darkness and not flinching. The bypasser skips that step. In doing so, they create spaces where authenticity feels unsafe, where only light emotions are allowed, where pain becomes failure. That's not spiritual, that's repression, because light without shadow is blindness. And finally, the sixth and most dangerous type, the charming void, magnetic, intuitive, effortlessly perceptive. They mirror your thoughts, finish your sentences. You feel seen, almost too seen. But Jung would say, that's not connection, it's simulation. The charming void has no core, no real self, just mirrors, reflecting whatever earns them access. They don't feel deeply, but they know how to act like they do. Because they mimic authenticity, the emptiness slips past you until it's too late. You've shared everything, they've shared nothing. You feel exposed, they remain elusive. They feel like a soulmate, but they don't connect, they extract. Once they have your trust, the game begins. Attention, validation, control. Stop feeding the mirror, demand something real, the mask cracks, they vanish, or turn cruel, or worse, weaponize your vulnerability, and you're left asking how someone so familiar could leave you feeling so hollow. Jung called it identification with the persona, becoming the role so completely they forget they ever had a self. But your soul knows, it senses the absence, the cold behind the charm, and once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. So what do? You stop playing the role, you question the guilt, sit with discomfort, choose boundaries even if it shatters the illusion. Because not everyone who feels familiar is safe. Some feel familiar because they fit your wound. And Jung would say, until you bring that to consciousness, it will rule your life, and you'll call it love. Awareness isn't paranoia, it's protection. The more you guard your psyche, the more clearly you see who's really there. Not the words, not the charm, just the pattern, the projection, the pull. And once you see it, you can finally choose to stop absorbing, to stop shrinking, to stop being the mirror, and become the one who refuses to play unconscious games, no matter how perfect the mask.